What's going on, everyone? My name is Omer, and welcome to that Millwall Podcast, episode number 4 of the 2021-2022 season. It's the big one. Millwall versus QPR is this weekend. We're going to have Dan Marsh on as a guest today. You'll notice I'm on my own for the intro here because Mickey, believe it or not, has an anniversary he's gone to tonight for his wedding anniversary. Mickey, if you listen to this, big up yourself. And obviously anyone that's in the video here, be sure to comment below and wish Mickey a happy anniversary. He's left me kind of alone riding this, but thankfully we've lined up a guest, and that's Dan Marsh. So his link will be in the description below to check him out on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. He's a local journal in the area and he obviously covers Millwall. So yeah, he always gives good insight, and I think you'll like the interview with him today. So without further ado, we'll get started with this video. If you're new around here, be sure to like, subscribe if you're new, and yeah, come on Millwall. Huge warm welcome to the show to Mr. Dan Marsh. How you doing, pal? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. You looking forward to the new season and all that? Obviously, we're only a few days away now from QPR.
Yeah, it feels like ages ago, doesn't it? Which is ridiculous when you consider the other two were pretty much just rolled into one long season. But yeah, buzzing for it.
Whilst I've got you on, obviously, I mean, what's your kind of hopes going into the season from a Millwall point of view? Obviously, I know we always made a few smart signings. Are you buying into the kind of, hopes and tribulations, so to speak?
I am. I think the business we've done is good. I really think that Benicophobe will turn out to be everything that I definitely thought Troy Parrott would be last year, and then I hoped Kenza Hall would be last year, and obviously neither of them worked out at all. I'm a little bit. I think if we are going to fall short anywhere, it's going to be the same again. I don't know if we've got that. If we've added those 15, 20 goals that realistically we're short of from breaking into plus, but I think we'll be up there again. I think again we'll take it. Hopefully we'll take it to the end of the season if we don't make it. Window isn't over. Potentially there might be a bit of scope to do a bit more.
Yeah, do you think we need a couple more in? Then obviously you mentioned the lack of kind of firepower, so to speak. Do you reckon maybe one or two, maybe in the forward areas, still might come in?
I think so. I think I said last season for the summer, for me, what we've lacked for years is like a proper creative midfielder. Mm-hmm. I still think really, I love George Saville, and I think he will add goals, but he's not the kind of midfielder I would have said we needed at the start of the window. I don't think you can turn down a chance to bring him back, and I think it's one of our better signings, but I still think I'd still like to see us do a bit there. Whether that's doable or not, I don't know. And then obviously something happens with Afobe. I know he played quite a bit last year in Turkey, but he's had injury problems. You're kind of back at Bradshaw, Bodvarsson, which hasn't done the business for the last couple of years, if we're being honest. So I think there's definitely scope for a couple of more in the attacking areas if we want to nail on that top 6 spot. But I think we'll be in the mix. We've not weakened the squad from last year, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be.
That is actually like quite a unique thing for Millwall, as in, we've signed obviously Ballard, Long as a backup to Bielkowski, obviously Saville you mentioned, and Phobie. It's like we've strengthened, and you're just kind of waiting for the who's going to leave sort of hope. But obviously the fear for me anyway is obviously Wallace has this 1 year left on his contract, and it's like, cool, like obviously you mentioned Phobie, but if we lose Wallace as well, or if any injuries to him, or if he actually goes, it's like, then you do see yourself a little bit short. I do agree with you though, isn't it? It's kind of, can we tie him down? I mean, what do you make of that? Obviously, he's kind of, I guess, hedging his bets a little bit at the moment and waiting for his opportunity to see what might be the best option. I mean, you can't knock him for it, but it's just kind of a risky position for the club to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think you can knock him for it. I think you're right. I think he's probably within his rights. He's probably been our best player the last 2-3 years easily. I think, was it now 27, 28? Realistically, I think he's been quite open about it. He wants to play in the Prem, and I suppose by hedging his bets, if we go up, I would imagine that he'd be quite open to staying and playing in the Prem with us. And if it depends really how our season pans out. If we're right in the mix at January, maybe that will change things, or maybe it won't. I think I do wonder if this situation would have occurred. I think COVID's played a part. Mm-hmm. If the market was what it was a couple of years ago, would the club have instead looked to cash in this summer? I don't know. I think for what he brings us, it's a risky game because the market is so inflated no matter what level you're at, really. In the top two, I'll probably even argue League One now as well. League One's like another championship, like trying to call that as a joke. So I do wonder if maybe that has kind of forced the club's hand a little bit. Like I'd be very, 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 very surprised if we cashed in, because, and this is just my opinion, because I don't see anyone in the climate offering enough money for the club to give up what Jed gives us.
That's it. I mean, from pre-season, obviously, I've seen a couple of our games. I went to the game Saturday in person, and like just him being back, I think he had a little injury for the last couple of games, but just him being there, like he's involved in all 3 goals, build up, and obviously he took his 3rd goal on Saturday quite well. And it's just, I guess if you're Millwall, you kind of balance the potential of him being there and maybe surging up to the top 6, and then maybe he signs that contract, isn't it? And then if he goes, then you're kind of thinking, well, where's the goals going to come from? You said it there, like he's obviously been one of our best players the last 2 years. It's a risk reward kind of element there, isn't there? Yeah,
definitely. And I imagine that is what Gamera and the higher ups have been assessing over the summer. It's difficult because I feel like now it's warming up a little bit. I saw Stoke paid a bit of money for Sam Surridge from Bournemouth yesterday. So it feels like it is maybe warming up a little bit. But I think for me, what he's brought the last, I think 10 goals the last couple of seasons, that's without even going into his assists. Far and away our top scorer. In today's market, what are we going to get for that? And then the more pressing problem, what are we going to spend that on to bring in? I can't see it happening. I think for us, the trying to think the right way to put it, the reward of what he could bring us outweighs the risk of potentially losing him in the summer.
Definitely makes 2 of us there, pal. I mean, whilst I've got you on, obviously, I did mention in my intro, Mickey's not here today, but we was going to play a little bit of a game, just kind of guess, kind of speculate who might be that key figure this season. Obviously, the last 2 years we've had Bart Bielkowski win the Player of the Season awards. Is he going to make it 3 times in a row? Obviously, we look back on this and maybe kind of laugh about it in the future if we've guessed kind of wrong or a different angle or anything. But I mean, for you, like, who do you think will be like the talisman this year? Who might be that fans' player of the year? I mean, it's kind of put you on the spot a little bit. I know you just popped on, and I know you said to me before we went on that you've not seen too much of us in pre-season, but who do you think might be that player of the year for us this year?
I think if the George Savile of 3 years ago now, is the George Savile was coming back and can have that impact. For me, I think he's got to be up there. I feel sorry for Jed because I feel like he said last year Bart won, and he won the last 2 years, didn't he? Bart, I think
he did, yeah.
I feel a bit sorry for Jed because he's had 2 blinding seasons, and each time he's been picked to a post by Bart. Obviously, Bart's had unreal seasons, but Jed again, right in the mix. I'd go for one of them 2 personally. Wild card, like I said a few minutes ago, I really fancy Afobe to do the business for us. I really hope he does. He comes across really, really well. I'm sure most people saw the interview on the club website after Ipswich. I'm quite hopeful that he'll hit the ground running, and I think potentially he could be in the shout as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Afobe could be that missing link that maybe will fire us kind of into the top 6 contention, so to speak. I think historically for us, I'm just looking through a list of player of the years in the last 20 years. Stuart Nethercourt, Matt Lawrence, Darren Ward twice, Richard Shaw, Paul Robinson, David Livermore, Andy Frampton. You don't often get too many strikers in there. I think even Neil Harris only won it once in the late 90s. And then obviously fast forward to the last 10 years, you've got Morrison and Gregory. And aside from that, it's Jimmy Abdou twice, David Ford, Alan Dunn, Makandawiri, Shitu, and obviously Bielkowski and Hutchinson. We just love, I think, we love defenders. And you're right, obviously Wallace is real unlucky there. But I guess for us, it's Mill kind of appreciate defenders and obviously goalkeepers, the kind of workmen of the team.
It's like that. You're spot on. Like anyone who goes will know. I remember that tackle Tony Craig did a few years ago that he celebrated. That's what it's like down there, isn't it? Someone crunches into the tackle and you get as much a buzz off that as you do a goal. So it's not a surprise. We do. I didn't realise going through that list there. That is a lot of defenders.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if someone more attacking wins it, it means we've had a good season. But yeah, thing is as well, our defenders, our defence is so strong. Like you look at Ballard's come in, and I think looks a good player. I've not seen him, but obviously did a good job at Blackpool. And you're not on the books of Arsenal if you can't play. I like Murray Wallace, but he's obviously been brought in to add something a bit extra. But you look at Cooper, Hutchinson, Bart, even Malone last year. I know he scored a lot of goals, but he's a fullback, he's a wingback.
Yeah.
Our defensive players are so solid and consistent, whereas obviously our attacking players probably aren't as consistent, because otherwise we'd have those 15, 20 goals that we've been lacking, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go with you and say Wallace or Phobie, but I can't look past the fact that Millwall love defenders. And to me, obviously, I've only seen us play in person once so far, and that was Ipswich Saturday. But I thought Hutchinson was superb. Like, just the way he reads the game. Obviously, he won the Player of the Season award 4 years ago now. But he's a player that, he seems to be at the top of his game at the moment. And I think he's, a bit of an unsung hero, because obviously you've got Cooper in there. That's the kind of younger player that's kind of always been consistent. But I think Hutchinson, considering when he first signed for us, how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, his injuries and stuff, I'm gonna back Hutch. I think maybe with outside chance of Ballard to maybe win the award this year, because you mentioned Ballard there, mate. But I think he will be a fan favourite. He's 6'6", a bit like Cooper, but like you said, the Arsenal breeds there, where like he can play from the back, get on the ball, and dictate play. And I think that could be a string to our bow that maybe we need going into the season. I don't know what you think.
I hope so. I mean, one thing that I think some people found a bit frustrating last year, but I noticed when I watched, is we had the back three, which is fine. I don't mind the back three. I think Malone and McNamara are really good going forward on the flanks. But then when we had Woods, who'd come really deep, and he'd be kind of sitting on top of defenders. And I suppose part of that maybe is because, we've kind of moved to a more possession-based kind of play than we did a couple of years ago. So having more defenders who are comfortable on the ball and stuff can only help that. And maybe that will allow the midfielders to push up a little bit, and they won't be kind of... So it was just so congested. And at times you'd look, and I'd look up, and there'd be, 6 players in our half. And, barely anyone in the other half. But Hutchinson, I think you're spot on. I think end of last season when he was out, I think you're spot on in terms of unsung hero. I think until he was gone, shipped quite a few, didn't we? Yeah. And, that last game as well, the Birmingham game as well. So, yeah, I think you could well be right. Hutchinson is a good shout.
We'll refer back to this anyway come May time, and maybe invite you back on again to kind of either kind of lord up the plaudits, or just kind of laugh ourselves into oblivion with that kind of prediction. But I'm with you, mate. Honestly, I hope that if a forward wins Player of the Season, you're right. We've hopefully done something good, and it's an indication of what's to come. I mean, you mentioned the formation. I was going to ask you for young Player of the Season, but we'll come on to that in a second. But you mentioned the 5-3-2. An element that I'm really kind of cautious about with Mill is obviously we play that behind closed doors on iFollow. We drew last, I think, November 5-0 in a row, whatever it was. And obviously it was quite boring to watch at times. How do you think the impact of the Den coming back into it, where the fans are there? Sometimes we can get our own teams back quite a lot at times, obviously, at times we don't push forward or attack. But with that kind of playing from the back formation, if we have 3 or 4 kind of goalless draws at home in a row, how do you predict that to go? The kind of pressure on the right to maybe change it up from the crowd? Yeah,
I think so. I was chatting. I spoke to Ryan Leonard in the week, and funnily enough, he mentioned a line that I thought was interesting that probably ties into that. But now the fans are back. Without fans last year, a lot of teams were kind of getting away with things that they wouldn't necessarily get away with, and I think for us that probably ties into that. When it's a packed house down at the Den, it works in our favour so much. But it would have got restless last year with that run. Not even that, just that run of draws. That shocking run, didn't we? For I think 14, 15 or games.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll get away with it this year. But I think to kind of counteract that, I think we will be a bit more front foot this year, because you don't know what you've got till it's gone. I think if they weren't, if Rout and the players weren't aware of what the Den gives us at its best, last year not having it, then they never will. And from what I gather from speaking to Thingy, I think they do. So I think it will be something. It sounds like hopefully they've had a year now perfecting it. It's been over a year now. We've been doing it. We've done it in the majority of the pre-season games, I think, like you said. So hopefully, everyone's under no illusions where we need to make the step up. It is goals and creating chances, and it's in nobody's interest to. It needs to be a 3-5-2 with the wing backs rather than a 5-3-2.
Yeah.
And I think the crowd will play in our favour this year, and I hope I'm not just being overly optimistic, but I think hopefully that'll be a thing in the past and kind of left in lockdown football.
No, I do agree with you there. I think we'll be pleasantly surprised with the formation. I think what struck me the most, being at the game on Saturday, was we played the 5-3-2, but we had George Saville, who a lot of people would have predicted would have been like the kind of forward or the free, but instead it was the left side, centre mid, Saville in that case, and Evans playing on the right side. Both of them were making runs in behind the strikers. And it took me by surprise because I was thinking it might be more Evans and Keith Belt holding at the time. But instead, it was Keith kind of sitting in the hole doing the Ryan Woods sort of role you mentioned last year. And it was Evans coming forward, overlapping on the right, helping McNamara and bombing forward, and Saville on the left with Malone, kind of almost like wide midfielders sort of thing. And I think we might catch some teams by surprise with that. And with that, it was the chances created. Saville had a good opportunity in the first half. Evans got a lot of the ball as well in the wide areas, and obviously he's good on the ball to put a cross in. So I think, with that element, we might be surprised to see, it could be actually a winning formation. But I do agree with you, hopefully we've moved past kind of playing from the back and obviously not really moving forward with it. So we'll see. We've got a full pre-season to work on it, and hopefully come Saturday it will come good. I'm going to ask you about who you think will be the young player this season. Now, the last 2 years was McNamara just gone, and the year before that was Billy Mitchell, obviously kind of just broke on the scene at the time, the season before last. It's possible one of them two might win it again, but obviously notable mentions to Isaac Alafe, who was on loan at Sutton last year, Alex Mitchell, the centre-half, Tienza's still involved in the first team fold kind of thing. Who do you think maybe as a prediction could be the young player of the season this year?
I don't think you can look past Danny Mack again. Been unreal since he's been back. Been absolutely unreal. Like I think Romeo hit a bit of a brick wall last year with his form. Like I think when Rout first took over, that right hand side of Wallace and Romeo, I feel like every game I watched, and eventually teams wise onto it, felt like at times that was all we had. Kind of towards the end of Harris's time in charge and the start of Rout. But I think McNamara's just been a breath of fresh air. Starting to get that link up with Jed that Romeo's picked up over the last few years. I really rate Billy Mitchell as well. And I think if Isaac Alafe hangs around, I like the look of him as well. He's got pace, which is something we've desperately lacked up top. And, for me, especially with his injury, I think if, because I remember there was talk that there were some good loan options in the Football League for Alafe, Tyler Bury and Alex Mitchell.
Yep.
But I think with Isaac's injury, if he's, still going to be struggling, not really had a pre-season, maybe there's a scope to keep him around especially if we're not going to bring another forward in until January and, 15, 20 minutes off the bench, from you look at the squad on Saturday, and again, this is just my opinion, this isn't anything, inside or anything like that. You look at the squad, I don't think Bodvarsson was there, and Rowett has gone from afterwards saying, he wants to get one more in, whereas before, I feel like he was a bit more assertive with that, whereas before it was like, oh, we'd like to do something, but we need to get some stuff out. I think, it wouldn't surprise me if we can find someone to take him, I would imagine he would go, especially that'll leave us a body light. I think we could do a lot worse than give him a crack. He's got the one ingredient I think we've missed up front. So if he plays and stays, then you're definitely right. He could be in the shout. He looks an exciting talent. So fingers crossed we get to see a bit of him.
So you went with Danny Mack. Just to be a bit different, I agree with you, to be honest. Danny Mack is probably my favourite of the trio. I think obviously Mitchell, I haven't really seen in person yet to kind of give him a fair crack of the whip, so to speak. Obviously on the iFollow last year, you saw what he was about, and obviously I know Rout Hotley, rates him, so to speak. But I'll be different, and just for a wildcard shout, I'll go with Isaac Alafe to be my young player of the year. I agree with you. I think no harm keeping him around, especially if he's got an injury going into the season, gives him some time at the club and trains around the team. And then maybe January, if he's not playing often and we strengthen there, we can probably push him to the side and, get him the opportunity to play in league football. Good shout there, mate. This one's a bit more fun here. Who do you think will win goal of the season? So, I mean, I know it's like what kind of goal could be scored, and for all we know, we could see Jake Cooper score from the halfway line or something stupid happen. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think for this one, I was going to put Scott Malone as a shout there, because obviously last year I think he did win the award for his goal against Sheffield Wednesday. I think a lot of people put it Gaza-esque, didn't they? Where he kind of lobbed it over one defender, and then he puts it in the bottom right corner. But who do you think could be that person that scores goal of the season?
Yeah, that is cool. That is a tough one. I'll go with. I know. The jury's still out a little bit, but I think, I'll go with George Evans. Come through. I think he come through at City, didn't he? So he can obviously play. I think, especially like you say, if we're going to have the kind of overlapping midfielders on the sides rather than the centre halves this year, which might be a little tweak that they've worked on, I'll go with Evans. I think, if he's not going to sit, because Keith Bell probably is the best option to sit, I'll go with Evans as a wild card option. You could say Jed. It'll be Jed or Malone. Had their own little competition last year, didn't they?
No, it's true. Very true. I think with Evans, I mean, the jury's out. You're right a little bit. I'll be honest. I don't really write players off. I'm always like glass half full. But with Evans, I'm not quite sure where his best position is in this side, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, he played centre half a couple of games last season. Obviously, he was brought in kind of like as a utility man almost. I think he played every game between him signing and the end of the season. But I do struggle to pinpoint a best position for him in the side. Do you have, like, in your opinion, like maybe where he might fit in best if you was to pick the team?
I'd probably stick him in midfield. I hope we're going to move away from the two sitting this year. So what you're saying about Ipswich sounds brilliant. I'd be intrigued to see him in the role he was in at Ipswich. I think in terms of the back three, I actually really like Leonard there on the right hand side. I'd probably go to. I mean, hopefully we won't need to because we've got Ballard and Murray Wallace, and I don't think Pearce will play as much this year. So I'd probably stick him in midfield on one of them sides and see what he can do. I'd rate Leonard as a potentially a better option on the right hand side of defence.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I think Leonard is an interesting one because he did actually come as a sub on Saturday and played right centre half again as well. And that did catch me by surprise because I would have thought Evans would have dropped in, but then I guess Rowett might be. I agree with you. When Leonard played there, I think it was against Huddersfield that one game, didn't he? Yeah. He played there, and before his injury, he was superb. So I do agree with you there. This is going to end up part one here. Before we go back, we're going to move into the QPR game on part two. So we'll be back in a second. And welcome to part number two. Now, Dan, mate, we're here to talk about one thing only. Saturday, football coming back. Firstly, we said we was excited to see it back. Got 2,500 Millwall fans on Saturday attending, sold out at Loftus Road. It's going to be a great occasion, isn't it? Just football fans being back and a proper atmosphere to come back to a London derby.
Oh, it's going to be buzzing. And it's going to be. I can't believe we've actually got both tiers for a change. Yeah. It's going to be absolutely bouncing, isn't it? Like. Any game, to be fair, it doesn't matter who we played. It was going to be bouncing. It was going to be a sellout. But it definitely, we owe QPR one, didn't we? Like they killed our playoffs the year before after we come back from lockdown. Really, they killed it last year when we lost that ridiculous game. We owe them one, didn't we?
I do agree with you, mate. And it's set up to be like a lot of people. If you read into, if you subscribe to people that talk about Championship football, the likes of Benjamin Bloom, Not the Top 20 podcast. These are a couple of things I listen to myself. A lot of people have. Not only us up there, but QPR as an outsider this year as well. A team that, you look at their business in the summer window, people are kind of praising them, kind of expecting them to kind of compete at the top end of the table. Obviously, they finished last season really strong. I think they had an outside chance of the playoffs themselves, but they left it a little bit too late. Obviously, Mark Warburton in charge. But, signing the likes of Charlie Austin, Sam Field from West Brom, Macaulay Bourne, he's gone out on loan, but he's also, a player that was obviously competing there, but replacing him with Austin. They're really throwing themselves into it this year, I feel like, Dan, and kind of giving it a good go.
Yeah, I think any team who's got Charlie Austin at this level is going to be in the shot. They're going to be in and about it. They have invested well. I think Warburton's a good manager. I don't really remember what went on with them last year. I know they had a bit of a nightmare, and then, like you say, they had a bit of a ridiculous run towards the end of the season, but they just left themselves a bit too much to do. I think they'll be there or thereabouts. They're another club who seem to, produce players like, I say produce players, we produced Eze, didn't we? They pick up players like Eze and Solomon and pick up other flair players like that who can have an impact. And, I remember that game back after lockdown. I can't remember if it was 4-3 or 4-2 in the end. It just looked like they was going to score every time they went forward. If they've got their stuff together from the start of the season, I could definitely see them being in amongst it.
I think we also played last season at Loftus Road when we was 2-0 up, and then we threw it away and lost 3-2. So it's definitely not a happy hunting ground for us. I think I was looking through like the archive, so to speak, and the last two times we've beaten were both at home. Morrison in 2011 or 2010, and also Morrison in 2017. So, we're definitely due a good result at Loftus Road. So, I mean, other players they've strengthened, Andre Dozzell from Ipswich, Stefan Johansson, who had a loan from Fulham last year, they made into a permanent deal. Moussa Adebayo, it's a bit of championship know-how in there, isn't it, as well? And obviously the likes of Jordan Archer. Remember that name? I think he's not getting a game there. I think it's purely as a backup to their goalkeeper. I think it's the goalkeeper that they've got there. Yeah. But, I think they've strengthened really well there, haven't they, under Warburton?
Yeah, they've done some good business. Stefan Johansson, I remember he went there in January last year, I think, and he had a big impact.
Yep.
I don't know much about Andre Dozzell since Ipswich dropped out of the Championship, but just them two alone, to be honest. Just Johansson and Austin, they're quality players. Austin, God knows how many promotions he's got in his CV. Mm-hmm. And I remember Johansson being a big part of Fulham when they went up both times, I think. And their squad wasn't, like you said last year, went on a really, really good way. It wasn't too shabby towards the end of last season anyway. So again, they're a team which hasn't necessarily weakened themselves. I think just Bonu went out, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
Not really lost anyone else.
And they've seemed to have just had that momentum through pre-season. I think they beat United, didn't they? Manchester United a couple of weeks ago, 4-1, I think, or 4-2. And they drew 3-3 at the weekend with Leicester. So, their fans, I think, will be really, expecting I think for us, it suits us being that underdog. We love being an underdog anyway as a club. But a lot of people will be expecting QPR to maybe turn us over on Saturday. But I think that's when you think about what comes into our favour. 2,500 fans behind the away end. It's kind of set up for us to kind of go in there with no fear and just play the occasion and hopefully come out on top.
I think so, yeah. I think, they're going to be, every team up and down the country will say this because they've got fans of their song. They'll be bang up for it. Mm-hmm. But you're right. We've definitely got nothing to fear. I mean, what I would say is the 2 QPR games in the last 2 seasons at Loftus Road have kind of gone against the grain in terms of we've shipped 3 or 4 goals, which doesn't tend to happen that often. So that'll be the acid test, wouldn't it? If we can, if we've still got that defensive stability, but we've added a bit more creativity and a bit more going forward, even it's not going to happen overnight, but even if, the signs are there, even if the goals, I don't think anyone's expecting us to go and put 3 or 4 past them, but even if there's the chance, just the chances to do that, felt like, sometimes last season, and I know some strikers haven't always, delivered when planned, but there've been games where we've not created an awful lot. And I think, for me, that, obviously that goes hand in hand. We're not going to solve the problem. It doesn't matter who we bring in up front. If we're not creating chances, no one's going to go and pick the ball up on the edge of our penalty box and dribble and go and score in the other box, realistically.
Of course.
So it'll be interesting, but I hope so. I think, it'll be absolutely bouncing. And, after not having that for so long, I can only think, that's going to, hopefully, that drives on because, like I said, it's been so long since we last beat them.
I agree there, mate. And fingers crossed. I mean, with team news from our point of view, obviously, Mason Bennett picked up an injury on Ipswich on Saturday. Obviously, we said Afobe and Wallace are likely to be the front 2, but, it's a real shame, obviously, just before the start of the season. Bennett, obviously, second full season here for us now, but it just seems to be a bit of a kind of unfortunate thing with him. But, he's always one injury away from kind of sitting out for a little while, isn't he?
Yeah, I feel really sorry for you went on Saturday, so you'll be able to tell me if this is right. By the sounds of it, it was a bad tackle that done him. Mm-hmm. I feel a bit sorry for him because he had that spell at the start of last season where he was in and out. And then I remember him saying I think he lost about half a stone. And then he went through the rest of the season, without any problems, I think. And he looked sharp. But, for me, if you're picking a front 2, I'd try and wedge Wallace in behind if we're playing that 3-5-2. And I'd have Afobe and Bennett as our pairing. Mm-hmm. So it's a real shame he's injured because I fancy him to have a really good season. I think when you look at what we need up front, I think he is it. He can be it, what we need. But obviously it's keeping him fit.
It's disappointment for him, isn't it? Because obviously, he finished the season, obviously him and Wallace kind of hit that partnership up a little bit. Routed then signs Afobe, who he's had before at Stoke, and it's kind of like almost, not losing trust in him. I'm sure Router still has a, big role for him to play at the club, but I'm sure if you're Bennett, you're thinking, right, let me get on, especially on Saturday. You're right. I mean, I think it didn't look dirty tackle at the time. Obviously, he didn't win the ball, the defender for Ipswich, and it should have been a penalty, I feel. And I think Router said the same thing after the game. but it's not a normal injury that Bennett will tend to do. You know, it's not normally muscle. He normally gets muscular injuries, like either he does his hamstring exactly. But in this case, it's a twisted ankle, and it's a real unfortunate for him where he's potentially damaged ligaments as well. And you're kind of thinking like, okay, I want to make a key impression here to kind of show, Phobe's just scored twice. I'm probably out of the team next Saturday, and then he goes to pick up that injury. It's just really unfortunate for him, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just got rotten luck, hasn't he? Like, especially I think if he'd have had a really tough time with injuries last season, then you'd maybe be a bit more like, is that the story? But I'm gutted for him because I think he proved a few bit. I think there's a bit of skepticism when he come back. Like, I think for the fee, the reported fee we got, I don't think we paid a lot for him, and he is a championship player, but there was definitely a bit of skepticism because of the injuries, and I think he kind of put that to bed a little bit, and he's had a bit of rotten luck by the sounds of it, and that's him potentially till September now, which is, we're not blessed with attackers anyway, which so it's not great news, no. But hopefully,
it might back up that theory you had so to cut in there of like, maybe we might strengthen one more player, so it might kind of force right hand.
Maybe, or I don't know how far away Isaac Alafi is, but maybe if he's not too far away, maybe that'll open the door for him. Maybe that'll change your thinking there. But yeah, I just hope it's there's no setbacks or anything, because he deserves a bit of luck, I think, for how he finished the season last year and how he dealt with the season last year. Off the top of my head, I can't really remember other than that little spell at the start of the season, a time where he was missing. So that's, shit luck.
Yeah, one step forward and two steps back. I think that's kind of, without kind of criticising Bennett too much, it's kind of a little bit of his career, especially at Derby as well. He always kind of never really nailed down the place, and you feel like Millwall could be that place for him, and unfortunately for him, it's another step back for him. But hopefully he'll be back soon, like you said there, after the international break, and come back into the team. I'm kind of thinking it'll be an unchanged 11 from Ipswich Saturday, Dan. I think I'm looking at the side, we won 3-0, obviously, confidence will be high. I feel like Keith Bell's going to be perfect against the likes of Johansson to break up play. And I'm expecting us to play that 5-3-2 of, Bart in goal, Ballard, Hutch and Cooper, McNamara, Malone, Keith Bells, Saville and Evans either side, and Wallace and Afobe up front. I mean, any changes you'd make to that if it was yourself, or what you thinking going into the game?
No, I don't think. I think I'd probably go with that. I think Saville kind of has to start because he's probably out of that group of 5 or 6 players. I think he does give us something different. Maybe not necessarily, like I said, what I thought we needed at the start of some, but he's probably the closest to it. The only question mark I'd have is maybe Evans, and I'd maybe have Leonard in. I feel like he's become a bit of a forgotten man, really, because of that injury coming at such a rubbish time. But for me, I think for the half a season he played, I would have had him up there as one of our most consistent players last year. I know he's not had it plain sailing since he come to a club, but I think over the last kind of 18 months over lockdown, I think he's one who's changed opinions. And again, it almost feels a bit harsh as well, Billy Mitchell. Now, again, had a great into the season, but I suppose that just shows how strong that midfield is now. Like, I liked Sean Williams, but I think the time had gone for him to be a starter, where I think this year, I don't think you'd argue with any of the midfield options coming in and starting a game, personally.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you mentioned Mitchell and Leonard there. I feel like we're leaving out Ben Thompson there. Again, it really does highlight the strength. And I think he's linked away constantly with this move to Portsmouth. And is it going to happen? Is it not? We're never quite going to know. And I agree with you about Leonard. I think anyone listening to this show knows that I was a big fan of him towards the end of the season before his injury last year. And again, I was another one that kind of thought, not sure on him when Harris was here and he signed him for £1.5 million. But you're right. I think maybe that injury just set him back a little bit from starting this game on Saturday. But he'll definitely have a part to play. So before you go, Dan, obviously thanks again for coming on today, and I really do appreciate it. I can't let you leave without giving me a score prediction. And I know score predictions are a bit lame at times, and some people don't like giving them, but I need a score prediction for you before you go.
I'll go 2-1 Millwall. It feels like easy money would be a draw, wouldn't it? Because that's just what we do. But I'll go 2-1 Millwall. You've got to have optimism on the first day of the season, haven't you?
Absolutely. Any goal scorers? You're going to go to that length for me?
A phobia. It's got to be a phobia. I look like a mug already, wouldn't I?
Nice, perfect. I do appreciate that. Where can people find you, Dan? Obviously, are you on Twitter? I know, obviously, at Daniel Marsh 92, you put in the description there. But where can people find you otherwise?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, on Twitter. There you go. You'll recognise Dan if you read South London or Flick Through Days, or he's a face around Millwall, so to speak. And Dan, hopefully we see a bit more of you on the show this year. Sorry. So I do appreciate you coming on today, mate.
Definitely, mate. Thanks for having us, mate.
No problem. And that's the end of part 2. So a huge thank you to Dan there for coming on. He kind of got us out of the pickle, obviously, with Mickey not being available today. And yeah, I think he gave great insight there. Like I said, he obviously previewed the game with us, gave some predictions. If you're yourself want to give a prediction, who you think might be player of the season this year, who you will think will be young player of the season, who might score goal this season, be sure to comment them below. Obviously, be sure to rate this video, give it a like, any comments, any debate, anything at all. I always reply to them and just give my insight as well. And yeah, we do appreciate everyone that's been subscribing recently. And yeah, I mean, check us out obviously on Twitter at That Millwall Pod, across our socials. It's the same on Instagram. We're on TikTok. I mean, Mickey looks after the TikTok for us, but check us out on there. Check out our website, www.thatmillpodcast.co.uk. And if you haven't already, be sure to vote for us for the FCA Content Awards. We're running the best new creator, best podcast, and obviously, if you haven't voted, do so now. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I've kind of gone on my own today. It's a bit kind of nerve-wracking. Let me know how you think I did as well. And yeah, we'll see you guys on Sunday for a review of hopefully Millwall's win against QPR.